Hello everyone, and this is a video to introduce you to the things that you should know as a Dungeon Master prior to running Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Number 1. The Horror Element. The horror element isn't as scary or intimidating as it is being portrayed. The horror element is one of the most advertised elements to this module. Senior reporter Charlie Hall of Polygon.com recently mentioned that this is one of the most challenging series of adventures in franchise history. The book throws virtually everything in the Dungeons & Dragons arsenal at its players. Even experienced dungeon masters will have a tough time keeping up. I'd hardly consider this the most challenging series. It pales in comparison to Tomb of Annihilation, Out of the Abyss, and Curse of Strahd. The only reason that even experienced dungeon masters will have a tough time is because of the awful starting quest tying everything together, the pacing of the book, and dealing with having to reflavor a lot of the text, especially if they had already promised their players horror. I've spent the last week reviewing the book with many other dungeon masters, and the general consensus is that a lot of the book needs to be reflavored or moved around to make a more fluid transition between chapters and also provide that horror element that the players were promised. Jeff McAleer, longtime critic of tabletop role-playing games and the first critic to publicly do a page-to-page review of Rime of the Frostmaiden, even states, "While I find the adventure's main concept solidly interesting, and the book contains loads of fun encounters and vignettes, there's also way too much which simply falls flat or is just rife with lackluster or uninspiring design." He mentions the fun encounters, which I can agree there are plenty of. You can encounter a blind, ancient white dragon with a long-deceased wizard dragon rider still attached on its back. You can go for a joyride on a whale submarine. You can earn halfling-shaped cookies for killing a moose, rather than receiving coin for completing that quest. You can play house with a bunch of Chwinga and pretend to eat with them. You can interact with the mini-me of the Ceramorphs, the gnome Illithid that also gives out a laser pistol with 50 shots to players. You can play Goat Ball with the Worm Doom Boys. You can enjoy the tune of the singing trout, Ol' Bitey. You can also, oh my god, what is that? Oh my goodness, take a bath. Look out behind you. You should have raised your passive perception. You should. Aw, that's cute. Oh my god, the horror. Wait, is that heart-shaped in his ripped jeans? What? Real. Those bangs look nice for real. Oh my goodness, they got Godzilla up in here. Okay. So they did add horror elements to the game. And it really is upon the dungeon master to play into it, if they want to run this as a horror, because not every group is going to want the horror aspect. The randomness of the silly or funny characters in between the horror, though, really distracts the mindset of what this is, and makes it feel more like a high fantasy adventure, where the party has to move around and encounter various creatures, and hopefully they're able to encounter those horror creatures they were promised. Even the isolation feeling that was promised falls short, but that'll tie into another point later on. In terms of actual horror events, the best by far will be with the Charladen Dragon, whose goal is to destroy all of 10 towns, followed up by the Caves of Hunger dungeon. Auril isn't hostile in the sense of killing as much as she is just worried about casting her spell every night and stopping people from intruding on her base or Ythryn. She even gives the players numerous chances to leave her abode and lets them retreat, as if more so bothered that they're there in the first place than having some sort of Count Strahd effect where she just haunts the players. The real horror can be felt in the Caves of Hunger, A decently sized dungeon which sees the party meet various types of creepy creatures, which are gnoll vampires, Tekalili, flame skulls, kobold vampire spawns, ice mephits, shadows, wraiths, snow golems, remorazes, drow elite warriors and mages, shadow demons, cold damaging piercers, that's kind of pretty cool, mummies, spitting mimics, and nothics. This is probably what Charlie Hall of Polygon meant when he said the book throws its entire arsenal at the players. This is a great time to crank up that horror vibe and let your players understand that maybe they won't survive. Number 2. Character secrets. Todd Kenrick perceives how Chris Perkins describes the secrets as something that sounds like the house on the haunted hill, where everyone has something dark that they are hiding and refuse to share. It's not quite like that, Todd. Sorry. Near the back of the book is an appendix that allows for you, the Dungeon Master, to photocopy and create secret cards to form a deck. The book suggests that your players should draw randomly. This would be great if the difference between the secrets wasn't so bad. There is a harmless secret, Drizzt fan, which states that the character once met the famous drow ranger Drizzt Do'Urden, a character from the R.A. Salvatore books. All they have to show for it, though, is a tattered piece from his famous green cloak. It seems cute and innocent, a nod to Salvatore. However, there are other secrets, such as the secret Orcstone, that are just much better. The Orcstone allows for you to summon a CR4 Orc Warchief from the Monster Manual for 10 minutes. And the player can do this 3 times before the stone doesn't work anymore. There's also another secret that grants the character cold resistance through a blessing from Auril, the Frostmaiden herself. Another one lets you play as a shape-shifting doppelganger race, allowing you to imitate anyone you see through a human polymorph, granting you dark vision, and innately casting detect thoughts. There are some interesting secrets that don't give mechanical advantages, such as the old flame secret, where the character has lost a lover in 10 towns and may at any point choose a random person to be their lost lover, which cannot be changed. Literally anyone. This would be great for comedy insert in what is supposed to be a game of horror. There's also the pirate cannibal secret where the character's ship got lost in a blizzard, and they only survived by eating the other crew members. This one does provide assistance to the players by knowing where the Dark Duchess ship is for Chapter 2, if you even run it, which you should if one of your players gets the secret. They definitely could have added in more plot hook related secrets, I believe. The background of having a slad tadpole within you may seem spooky until you realize your paladin friend over there can rub your tummy for 5 lay on hands points to kill it, which can be done literally within session 1 due to paladins getting 5 lay on hand points immediately, and the slad egg is destroyed if the character is cured. One of the secrets that could have been interesting to add is one that I've created as a homebrew, where the character committed a serious crime against a member of the Lord's Alliance, resulting in being incarcerated within the prison Rebel's End. Somehow, the character managed to escape, and regardless of if the character actually committed the crime or not, the Lord's Alliance is looking for them. This gives a sense of horror in that the character will have to look over their shoulder the entire campaign, and also would be afraid of telling their party members and fear that they might turn in the escaped prisoner. Not only that, it allowed for this character to know the entire layout of Revel's End and give a plot hook that goes into the quest in Chapter 2. All I know is that mid-campaign, if I found out that I was stuck with the Drizzt fan secret and everyone else got cool secrets like the doppelganger or the cold resistance, I'd be a little upset. Okay, I'd be pretty upset. So make sure you review them before you assign them and omit which ones you don't like. Make sure you let your players know about their character secrets too prior to making characters. My party had already made their characters when I wanted to add in secrets, However, some of these secrets, such as the doppelganger, can really affect and change up a backstory and what a player might have wanted to play. If your player already has characters or their backstories, I recommend finding which ones may work without breaking their backstory and manually assigning it, or just don't include the secrets because they aren't really that important in the first place. I will say, the nice part about secrets is that Wizards did incorporate all throughout the book random areas where each secret can best fit, like the Slad secret having the Slad tadpole erupt in the Caves of Hunger. Now, that'd be pretty scary. Number 3, the Sandbox design of 10 towns. The book has been criticized, as previously mentioned, for giving experienced dungeon masters a hard time keeping up, with a lot of the content falling flat, and a lot of reviews that are coming out are saying the pacing is poor and mentioning the awkward sandbox creation at the end. Fiction writer Dan Arndt of The Fundamentals mentions that one of the endings is extremely weird and puts players in a very, very difficult position going forward. I'm kind of shocked I even put it in. The ending that they are talking about, again, this part is a pretty big spoiler, so don't ruin it if you don't want to, is the obelisk within the necropolis of Ythryn. If the players use the Demilich of Ythryn, Eriolarthus' Staff of Power, on the obelisk, a Coatl, in the disguise of an Aarakocra, sends the group back in time to the year minus 343 Dale Reckoning, 4 years before the events of Karsus' folly that brought down the Netheril Empire. For the Dungeon Masters looking to segue this Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign into another module, this obelisk might be something you want to omit. Though with the hype around it, the party is going to be interested now more than ever. You can almost expect at least one player to want to go through with destroying the obelisk, resulting in your party getting sent back to a time before even the Sword Coast's existence. This is great if you want to go back and bring 2nd edition adventures, and a good start would be the Forgotten Realms campaign expansion for Netheril, the Empire of Magic for the lore, and How the Mighty Are Fallen, which is ironically for players levels 11 through 14, and is set within the ancient empire of Netheril and the lead up to Karsus' folly. Otherwise, as a dungeon master, it's an undesired potential path you could go down, which might mean the end of those characters, and being forced to play new ones, especially if your players don't want to play in that type of setting. It'll either be that, or they summon the Tarask, which eventually destroys the entire north without much resistance. But who knows, those could be avoided if the players aren't even sufficiently hooked into chapters 6 and 7 anyways, which are the chapters for the Caves of Hunger and Ythryn. First chapter is about 10 towns where the players are supposed to be hooked by one of the 2 starter quests, which sends the players visiting several other settlements. Each town has at least one main quest, and some have smaller quests that can help hook into another settlement. Otherwise, it's really just up to the players to choose where they want to go, unless you as the dungeon master figure out which ones you'd prefer and give them a little railroad bump towards it. The nature of the sandbox means the players will be unpredictable at times and can head to any settlement. You'll have to know the information of every settlement just in case if this is how you decide to run your campaign. The 2 starting quests are meant to hook players into looking through different settlements either for a serial killer or the Chwinga. The serial killer quest focuses on combat for the parties that prefer combat, and the Chwinga focuses on cutesy roleplay that involves playing pretend house with them and trying to capture one for the quest giver. For the Chwinga starting quest, Nature Spirits, the Chwinga aren't in the starter town, and there is a 25% chance that they are in each town after. The odds can swing in either direction, but if you find a Chwinga in the first settlement you visit after your starting town, then your quest tying the 10 towns is over, and the story doesn't provide you with another means of tying them together. You can make up your own quests in the sandbox scenario, or hope that the manhunt serial killer quest will work in its stead. There is also the chance that somehow you keep failing that roll with the 25% chance, and players are stuck with going to each settlement until they are high enough to where you as the Dungeon Master aren't rewarding them with levels anymore and elect to drop the Chwinga quest. For the Serial Killer quest, Cold Hearted Killer, the Dungeon Master rolls 1d10 to figure out which town the serial killer is in, besides the starting town that they are currently situated in. Dungeon Masters, I just have to warn you now that the NPC Cephik Caltro is very strong for a fight against levels 1 to 2 characters. His average damage is 7 or 8 slashing and with a longsword, which also does an average of 5 cold damage. That's a max average of 13 points of damage, and he has multi-attack. He could potentially down 2 playable characters per turn. That isn't even factoring the bandit crownies that could be fighting with him. So it is recommended that if you intend on using this quest, decide on a settlement rather than rolling for it. Or maybe wait until your party is at least level 3 before letting them find him. The table for the character advancement recommends that if you're doing milestone leveling, your party reaches level 2 after their first quest, 3rd level after 3 quests, and 4th level after 5 quests, and recommends not giving any more levels after that. Combining with the starter quests, the players may be done with 10 towns as early as 3 settlements, if you factor in using both starting quests, and those 2 are completed alongside the 3 settlement quests that your party does. This enables great replayability in the future, allowing for future parties to enjoy going to new locations, and you as a Dungeon Master going to play through new locations each time. My only real complaints about this chapter are the amount of silly moments, the lack of real horror, and the overpowered stat block for the serial killer, as well as the poorly implemented starter quest, the amount of fetch or clear out quests, and of course, the use of a night hag instead of a beer hag. I mean, come on, this is the North. Give me a freaking ice hag. The things I do love about this chapter include the snowflake system, which details how friendly each settlement is, what types of services they offer, and how comfortable each settlement is. The biggest element of horror within these settlements, I would say, is the sacrifices that are made to Auril, which can be done either by sacrificing their food, their warmth, or their people. There was even an event in East Haven where the players stumble across a wizard being burned on a stake. The wizard plays an important role in giving clues into the later chapters, as he has found a lost spire of Netheril. I love this wizard burning scenario because it is a darker element at play, and one of the only horror moments we see in 10 Towns. The human sacrifices to Auril occur the night of each new moon, so the 15th of every month, and the wizard burning occurs randomly. So I'd recommend lining up your dates to have the players in one of the 3 towns that do human sacrifices so that they can get that tension of potentially getting selected for a sacrifice. Bryn Shander is one of those towns that sacrifices humans, for example. They have a population of 1,200 and require everyone that is within the town that's staying there to register for the human sacrifice. You could homebrew a scenario where the players are assigned a number, and on the day of the sacrifice, the number is randomly picked via a roll of 1 through 1,200. There is already a homebrew quest that supports this, and I'll go ahead and link that below. Number 4. The Sandbox design of Icewind Dale. Chapter 2, Icewind Dale, is just as much of a sandbox. The character advancement table even lists giving levels after they've spent 2 or 3 sessions exploring Icewind Dale or completing an extraordinary feat like ending the feud between the 2 Goliath clans. It's up to you to figure out what you want to run as a Dungeon Master and how the players are hooked into going there, risking their lives in these horrendous blizzards. The players will do this until they're about level 7. There is a Tall Tales table within the book, similar to the Rumors table for 10 Towns, except it mentions details about the random events in Icewind Dale instead of the settlements. One of them is for the Goliaths and can be summed up as someone saying, Boy, I sure do wish I could meet a Goliath. It's a shame that those two major clans are fighting along the spine. The issue I have with this particular tall tale is that my players, as well as probably a decent amount of tables, will have at least one Goliath, and that statement doesn't really hold up well. Also, the book allows for you to create your own tribe, though giving no guidelines for how to do so. It's possible that my Goliath player or players have their tribes already working with 10 towns. You'll have to reword some of these to make them make more sense and be more appealing to your specific table. I'd again recommend doing at least the Lost Spire of Netheril, as it ties into the future chapters so well. Another Chapter 2 quest that ties into the Burned Wizard is also the Revel's End quest, which also hints at the Arcane Brotherhood and better places them into the scenario for the future chapters. The better horror-themed quests of this chapter include going to the ship Dark Duchess, which houses an ice troll. Another is the Black Cabin, which houses the Summer Star item, which allows for the players to control the weather. If the players are able to fix the design flaw of this item and use it, Auril sends at least one Cold Light Walker and 3 Ice Mephits. Because these quests are designed for at least level 4s, this is a great area that you can implement players from previous modules, like Waterdeep, Dragon Heist, where players walk away as level 5s. Number 5. Hooking into Caves of Hunger and Ythryn. Rime of the Frostmaiden can be described as 3 separate major quests, smashed sloppily into one book with weak hooks and no real ties, unless you actually plan for them. Chris Perkins even stated in Dragon Plus issue 32 that the adventure did not cycle around Auril at first, and it seems strange to tell a story in that setting and not really touch upon the Frostmaiden at all. Once they realized her absence was noticeable, they made her into a more central part of the adventure. The central part couldn't be any more true, as she's meant to be a mid-adventure big bad evil Gale only. After your level party has had fun with a lesser deity, their only hook into chapters 6 and 7, which are for the Caves of Hunger and the Necropolis of Ythryn, is one simple quest. All it takes is to ignore that one NPC and 2 chapters are bypassed. The quest hook going into the Reghead Glacier is kind of just sprung onto the players, though the NPC does mention that the ancient city might have a means to end the everlasting winter and also might have some ancient treasures. That will probably be enough of a hook, except one major issue is with that, and that you have the possibility of defeating Auril within chapter 5, Auril's abode. You don't even need to kill her, just her rock. You can lift the everlasting winter from Icewind Dale before the final chapters of the book. Depending on your character's backstories, they might not even care to risk their lives in some ancient cave that could kill them, now that life can be restored to normal. You'll need a strong tie going into the Caves of Hunger. Hopefully, the party doesn't realize that the only quest giver going into Caves of Hunger is aligned with the Arcane Brotherhood and accidentally killing her. Oops. Her name is Valin, which is close to villain, so naturally some parties are probably not going to be trusting of her. Number 6. Auril the Frostmaiden's status as the big bad evil Gale. Auril the Frostmaiden is not the big bad evil Gale, though she could be. It really depends on the Dungeon Master and how you handle her in Chapter 5, Auril's Abode. Really quick though, I just want to point out that there are several shipwrecks around her island of Solstice, and on the list of shipwreck discoveries, it shows 3 sea hags have turned one of these shipwrecks into their lair. Okay, I get it. It makes sense. Sea hags, abandoned ship. I get it. But the pure hag people, come on. Where is it? Look, it even says it blasts people with rhyme. Rhymes in the book name, damn it. Damn it, Chris Perkins, where's my beer hag? Also, why you slaying her name, Chris? You're saying Auril.
Auril the Frostmaiden.
The book has it as Auril, but everyone out here using the Fates and Pantheon's pronunciation, Auril. Anyways, Auril's combat takes place in her queen's bedchamber, unless she has left the fortress to cast her mighty spell. It also mentions instances where her rock would attack anyone coming in on griffins, that she could summon her rock to help her out in combat, what happens if you defeat her, or what happens if the characters flee. The party starts out by going through several test trials, where Auril teleports the party around Icewind Dale to complete tests. If they succeed, they can attempt to take on her blessing. This is a DC 21 save, or they get turned into an ice stone statue. If they succeed though, they gain immunity to cold damage and can cast the Cone of Cold spell once per day, which seems very silly that she'd be willing to do this, considering that almost immediately the party would go after her to attack her, and all of her abilities deal cold damage. She can take away the blessing at any time, sure, but with the party there presently, it would be funny for them to attack after getting the immunity. It's probably just another method to deter the party away from her lair. She gives the party so many opportunities to leave, even after retreating from a battle with her. So Dungeon Masters, do not hold back if your players want to continue their chances against a lesser deity, even if her challenge rating for her 3 forms are 9, 10, and 11 respectively, which are all easy for a party of 6 level 7s, by the way. There are methods to make her fight better though, especially using environmental effects, her companion rock, and her layer action to teleport. If you've done your part right to set her up being a continued big bad evil gale, the party flees for their lives and Auril lets them. That's when the quest giver tries to get the party to head into the Reghead Glacier. Honestly, if it weren't for Auril's everlasting winter, Sardarok's Chardalin dragon would feel like the big bad evil guy. The whole encounter of the dragon flying around and destroying 10 towns is just great, and offers a chance for the party to really use their brains to come up with a strategy that will either save a lot of Dale folk or will fail, and many of them will die. The real endgame big bad evil guy though is a demi-lich, Eriolarthus, and even then, there is the potential of bypassing him altogether. He was a powerful lich that has been trapped within Ythryn since even before the fall of the Netheril Empire. So much so that he even still believes to this day that the Empire is around and is waiting for their arrival and rescue. He initially believes that the people that have arrived, your party, are rescuers from another Netherese enclave, and with a group DC 13 deception check, your party can convince him that they are. Your players could then sneak around, find the hidden treasures, and potentially make way before the demi-lich even realizes. If you put that in perspective, the Chardalin dragon is someone that you're going to have to fight regardless of what happens. But besides that, Auril the Frostmaiden can be bypassed, and so can the demi-lich. That means there is a potential that technically the Chardalin dragon is the big bad evil guy. There's so many ways to spin this around to make one of these creatures be the big baddie. It's really up to the Dungeon Masters to figure out which one the players would like the most. Though I will suggest Auril the Frostmaiden only because the book is called The Rime of the Frostmaiden. Again, if you play your cards right and prevented your level 7 party from killing the lesser deity Auril the Frostmaiden, she returns while the party is in Ythryn to have a final showdown. She likes to preserve the nature of beauty by freezing it, and the party unsealing and plundering the necropolis makes her mad. Once more though, she offers to let the party leave or face her wrath. I mean, come on, how many chances does this lesser deity gotta give before these players just get the clue? If they leave the city, she spares them. Otherwise, she has an arsenal of minions with her now, including cold light walkers, snow golems, frost giant skeletons, and winter wolves. Number 7. New cold spells. One of the things we are promised are new cold spells. One of the damage types that is pretty lacking in 5th edition are cold type spells, so naturally it's exciting news for people like me. Until you realize there are only 3 new spells, which are for the wizard class only, and only one of them is a cold spell. And it's just a rewrite of Burning Hands to do cold damage, Frost Fingers. So no new spells, no new cold spells really. Blade of Disaster is just a meh 9th level version of Spiritual Weapon, and Create Magen just allows you to create a Magen Servant for the sacrifice of your max HP being reduced by the challenge rating number and 500 gold pieces and consumables. But since they are new, I will list all 3 spells for shareable knowledge in the description below. Number 8. Time. Another big topic is time. When does it occur? How do players determine time? And how long has this everlasting winter been occurring? The book mentions that the adventure should take place in the winter of 1489 Dale Reckoning or later. The exact date isn't important, but what this means is that the module for Rime of the Frostmaiden takes place at least 4 years after Legacy of the Crystal Shard, which was written for the 4th edition, but has a Dungeons & Dragons Next conversion, otherwise known to 5th edition. So you should be able to easily start your players out in that adventure if you would like. I'll provide the link to the information in the description below that will detail the conversions from 4E to 5E for you. If you've never played through Legacy of the Crystal Shard, I'd recommend giving it a read before deciding on the starting chapters of Rime of the Frostmaiden. It's a great book. They'll take your players from level 1 to level 4 by the end of the book, which is just enough to bypass chapter 1 of Rime of the Frostmaiden if you'd prefer that. Legacy of the Crystal Shard has great reviews. It's an awesome adventure that includes a tier 1 big bad evil gale out of Auril's chosen, the Icewind, and also brings in a key player from the Arcane Brotherhood, as well as has a character that is in Chapter 2 of Rime of the Frostmaiden, which you can find in Revel's End. So it fits nicely. It is recommended that you level your party to level 4 though, before they face the Icewind, should you choose to incorporate a Legacy of the Crystal Shard. The sandbox nature of Chapter 1 and 2 allow for your players to realistically come in at any time, I'd say between levels 1 and 7. The year that they recommend lines up well with a lot of the other 5th edition books, with Princes of the Apocalypse occurring in 1491, Tyranny of Dragons in 1489, Waterdeep Dragon Heist in 1492, Descent into Avernus in 1494, and Storm King's Thunder. Doesn't give a set year, but occurs after Tyranny of Dragons, so we'll say roughly 1490. Out of the Abyss starts getting into motion around 1485, 1486, according to a related novel, and most people speculate that the Tomb of Annihilation would occur around 1493 through 1496, but it has no set date, so that's really up to you. If you want an extra horror element added into your game, I would recommend looking up the Death Curse from Tomb of Annihilation. It'd be interesting for the players to be experiencing Rime of the Frostmaiden while Tomb of Annihilation is occurring elsewhere in the jungles of Cholt. Essentially what it is the Death Curse prevents the raising of the dead even when using resurrection spells, and it causes creatures that were previously raised from death to wither and die. Personally, I believe it'd add an extra element of horror and suspense to the module. How long has the events of Auril's Everlasting Winter been going on? Well, in the cold opening of Chapter 1, it details that Icewind Dale has been trapped in a perpetual winter, and the sun no longer appears above the mountains, not even in summer, and it's been this way for over 2 years. Under the Sacrifices to Auril section, it mentions the Dale folk of 10 towns began their sacrifices to Auril about a year ago. Without the sun, how will settlements and your players tell time and be able to set up points to meet up? Well, that part is left up to the Dungeon Master to decide, but it is mentioned that in order to preserve their precious wooden materials, the Dale folk use whale oil for lamps. In our history, there have been oil lamp clocks. Oil lamp clocks are just clocks that consist of a graduated glass reservoir to hold oil, usually whale oil, which burns cleanly and evenly, supplying the fuel for a built-in lamp. As the level in the reservoir dropped, it provided a rough measure of the passage of time. Other great choices would be hourglasses, water clocks, candle clocks, which you could even use as alarm clocks as well if nails are placed into the candles at specific points. Number 9. Goliath Changes. The only changes to Goliath is their mountain-born trait, which now reads, you have resistance to cold damage. You're also acclimated to high altitude, including elevations above 20,000 feet. I've seen some dungeon masters having issues with this, even outright banning it in fear of it being too powerful due to it overcoming the effects of exhaustion checks from extreme cold conditions, as well as frigid waters. It should be noted that even before the change, the mountain-born trait read, you're also naturally adapted to cold climates, as described in Chapter 5 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Chapter 5 is where the extreme cold and frigid water conditions are. Sorry, but Goliaths have always been able to walk around naked in the tundra without adverse effects. The cold resistance just makes sense for their race, and there isn't enough cold damaging going on anyways that it should be a bother for your campaign. Number 10. Survival Rules. One of the biggest advertisements about this module is its sense of isolation. Players and dungeon masters alike are expecting harsher survival rules, including food and water requirements. Well, the extreme cold and frigid water statements are just pasted statements from the Dungeon Master's Guide. The only change to extreme cold that you'll find is when the players go to Auril's abode, and her regional effect bumps it up to a DC 15 from a DC 10. But even then, that only affects players who aren't wearing cold weather clothing or have resistance to the cold. The illumination rules state that as long as the everlasting winter is occurring, natural light in Icewind Dale is never brighter than dim. This twilight condition lasts from 10 AM to 2 PM every day. All other times, Icewind Dale is dark until Auril's aurora or the full moon appears in the sky. Rules for avalanches and blizzards have now been added into the module, and both factor in to Chapter 2 of the book. But first, I'll go ahead and describe what the avalanche rules are. The avalanche rules can also be used for rock slides. A typical avalanche is 500 feet wide, 150 feet long, and 30 feet deep. Creatures in the path of an avalanche can avoid or escape it if they're close to its edge, but outrunning one is almost impossible. When an avalanche occurs, all nearby creatures must roll initiative. Each round on initiative counts 20, 10, and 0. The avalanche travels 200 feet until it can travel no more. When the avalanche moves, any creature in its space moves along with it and is knocked prone. In addition, the creature must make a DC 15 strength saving throw. On a failure, it takes 1d10 bludgeoning damage and is restrained until the avalanche moves again. On a success, the creature takes half as much damage and is not restrained. When the avalanche stops, the snow settles and buries creatures in it. A creature buried in this way is blinded and restrained and has total cover. The creature gains 1 level of exhaustion for every 5 minutes it spends buried in the snow. It can attempt to dig itself free as an action, breaking the surface and ending the blinded and restrained conditions on itself with a successful DC 20 Strength Athletics check. A creature that fails this check 3 times can't attempt to dig itself out again. Sorry, wizards. Alright, the blizzard rules. A blizzard in Icewind Dale typically lasts 2d4 hours. The blizzard's howling wind limits hearing to a range of 100 feet and imposes disadvantage on ranged weapon attack rolls. It also imposes disadvantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing. The wind extinguishes open flames, disperses fog, erases tracks in the snow, and makes flying by non-magical means nearly impossible. A flying creature in the wind must land at the end of its turn or fall. Suck it, Aarakocra. Visibility in the blizzard is reduced to 30 feet. Creatures without goggles or other eye protection have disadvantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight due to blowing snow. Any creature that is concentrating on a spell during combat in the blizzard must, at the end of its turn, succeed on a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or lose concentration on the spell unless the creature is sheltered against the elements, such as being inside of an igloo. Blizzard rules are pretty great for forcing characters from enjoying the open setting and just flying and blasting down safely. It'll force the characters into a closer group, which will make combat even more dangerous. The concentration checks for casters is gruesome and could see spellcasters quickly burning through their resources. To go along with the blizzard rules, there's also blizzards on the open tundra, which affects how a character can even get lost. It mentions that on the open tundra, it's easy to veer off course while traveling through a blizzard, and it's also easy for party members to become separated from one another, which is why the wisest course of action is to stay put and wait for the blizzard to pass. If the characters travel during a blizzard, have the players designate one party member as the navigator. At the start of the blizzard, the Dungeon Master makes a DC 15 Wisdom Survival check on behalf of the navigator. On a successful check, the party stays on course. On the failed check, party wanders off course, putting its members no closer to their destination than they were when the blizzard started. If the check fails by 5 or more and the party members aren't tied together, one randomly determined party member becomes lost in the blizzard and separated from the others at a time of the Dungeon Master's choosing. When the blizzard passes, have the characters, including the missing one, make a DC 15 Wisdom Survival group check at the end of each hour. If this group check succeeds, the missing party member is found, but no progress is made reaching the group's intended destination. The group check can be repeated after each hour spent searching for the missing party member. This specific statement right here about the players getting lost is awesome. If you want to give your party that sense of isolation, you should make sure this happens at least once. I would also argue that there should be a homebrew situation added in for your players, that while they are separated from the party, they find someone but they don't find the party. Maybe they find a reghead barbarian tribe, and that tribe then decides to kidnap said player, and now the players are having to infiltrate through a reghead barbarian tribe to try and save this member. If you want to use something that's a little bit easier than having to homebrew an entire scenario, I'd recommend using something like Outside of the Cave in the Horde of the Dragon Queen Chapter 1, where the players have to go inside and rescue one of the dragon eggs. On a final note, I will say that there is a potential for some great moments within this module, and it'll be fun to run for my players, including seeing how they interact with the obelisk at the end. There are a lot of great monsters put into this module, and the new additions are cool to see. The book has a lot of amazing art within it, and the maps are amazing. It's great to see colored maps again, let's be honest. The book has pacing issues though, and feels as though it was quickly thrown together with quests that don't always turn out to be fun. For example, the Bremen settlement quest is to go out into Mare Dwalden and talk to an awakened Plesiosaurus, which is a reference to the Loch Ness Monster. The encounter can last a long time, and when you finally talk to this awakened Plesiosaurus, it mentions that it's been attacking boats because it was told to by a frost druid of Auril the Frostmaiden, and that it's worried about losing its sentience if it doesn't listen. Well, one quick persuasion check teaches that Plesiosaurus that no matter what happens, it'll have its sentience, and that is literally the quest. It swims away, stops attacking people. The end. Nothing more, nothing less. The quest is also a smaller and more boring version of the whale submarine quest you're going to find in Chapter 2, so I'd recommend just waiting out for that version. It's always best as a Dungeon Master to do a cover-to-cover review and see what all is inside, but in this case, as a Dungeon Master, you'll have to do prep. A lot of Dungeon Masters love modules because they don't have to prepare as much, but in this case, sadly, it'll be necessary in terms of reflavoring things and figuring out what quests would be best for your players, what they would like, and how to hook them in properly so they don't accidentally do one of the more dull quests. If you liked this video, and if you'd like to discuss more details about the Rime of the Frostmaiden book, you may join us on the Rime of the Frostmaiden Dungeon Masters Discord, which will be linked below, and you can discuss anything and everything related to the book and have any questions you may have answered. We also have a lot of resources already prepared going into Icewind Dale to aid in making your preparation easier and also making your sessions better. Also, if you join our server within the next week, we are currently partnering with a website called Gyld, which is an awesome tool used for both dungeon masters and players to find players for their one-shots and campaigns. It is way better than the Roll20 setup, as well as the Discord servers and various subreddits that I've personally used for finding people to play with. I'm really hoping that Gyld is able to make its way at the top in terms of being able to be the #1 spot for finding players. So many times I've had to go through with the Finchers League and use various different websites, both as a dungeon master and a player, for setting up games and finding players, and I'm frankly tired of it. So if we can have one website where we can do everything all at once and find new people to play with, that would be great. And so far I'm loving the user interface of this. The way that you can select times and availabilities is really awesome. Also, during the release week, as well as the day of the release, Gyld is also hosting free book giveaways, digital copies of the book Rime of the Frostmaiden, giving out one per day for each person that signs up on the website and lists a listing and really tries out using the website. Definitely recommend giving it a go, checking out our Discord to find out more information, and we would love to see you guys in the future discussing these topics. If you have any comments you'd like to discuss, please leave them below. I'd love to see what your opinion is. Thank you for watching.